Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Toolkits Live Graphic Narratives with Marc Pearson. Before we start, we just want to do an acknowledgement of country. I am actually on Cmyk land in what's known now as San Diego. And Marc, where are you?
I'm on the Wurundjeri lands in the Kulin Nation, and yeah.
Great. And yeah, Express Media just wants to acknowledge that these lands have never been ceded and they will always be Indigenous lands. So Toolkits, if you don't know, is a program run by Express Media that offers classes online for young writers. And Toolkits Live is a special guest session of Toolkits where we bring in different artists and writers to talk about their areas of expertise. And it's made possible by the Copyright Agency. So tonight we have Marc Pearson, who is a comics artist and one of the founders of Blom Press, a risograph comics press in Melbourne. Welcome, Marc. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, no worries.
Marc's going to talk to us today about Photoshop and digital coloring. So do you want to get started now, Marc?
Sure. Hello, everybody. I just have a demo, I guess, that is just running through how I would take an image from a black and white line drawing to a fully colored digital illustration in Photoshop. I have some, I guess I'll go to the share my screen to show the Photoshop window. So I guess, yeah, I used to do more more watercolory stuff before I was doing more digital illustration. Just as a background on me, and now I've kind of pivoted. I do more kind of digitally illustrated coloring with kind of, usually I take it to a risograph, and so there's, on the left there's a digitally colored image here, and on the right there's a risograph image. But yeah, that's just, anyway, some backgroundy stuff I don't save. So yeah, today I kind of I'll just like run through a bunch of the tools that I've found have helped me like speed up the process and also just like kind of make it less annoying and confusing. But if you have any questions throughout the whole session, there's like a chat window, and if you, I'm happy to answer questions throughout, and I'll try and keep an eye on them. So to start, these are the two line drawings that we're starting with here. So this is it's just a black ink on card, like watercolor paper, and it's this line drawing appropriation of this Giorgio de Chirico painting called Death of a Spirit, which is the biscuit painting. I don't know if you've heard of the biscuit painting, but I thought it would be fun to color this biscuit painting. This is the line drawing. So first off, with scanning. So this there's a document that I'll be running through all these points, and I guess there'll be a document up in the chat that we can put up at the end or during, would be cool. But if you need the document, let us know. But yeah. With scanning with an image like this, I used to scan it in grayscale, which would look like this typically, where you can kind of see the paper quality. You can see the all of the lines are kind of gray, you know. And at some point, I found out that you can scan if your art is kind of more line based. Which we'll cover it for both ways. But if your art is more line based, you can there's a setting on the scanner called the text setting, which scans just text. So which is kind of like binary. It's like either black or white. So you can scan it in at, I scan these at 600 dpi, which dpi is dots per inch, and print quality is usually 300 dpi. So yeah, 600 being double that. Yeah, so this I guess I found out with the text setting, it's much easier for if you're taking a drawing to color it digitally. Getting rid of the knocking out this kind of paper, kind of this gray paper, was a whole step that I used to do, and I used to have to kind of I would go in, I would unlock the layer, and I would go Command L, which is kind of adjustment levels, or image adjustment levels, which is Command L. I don't know if you can see my, oh, you can't. So yeah, I guess, so on the top bar, image adjustment levels, which is Command L, which would open this pop-up screen. Oh, you can't see the pop-up screen. Oh no. Maybe I'll just share my whole screen so you can see what's happening. I'll try and get rid of this, my entire screen, yes. But then hopefully we don't get some sort of horrible effect where, okay, hopefully that's better. Now, so that's my entire screen. I'll just keep the chat. Oh, I don't know if that's a good idea. Anyway, maybe I'll put it in the comments. Okay, so this screen here, whoopsies, is the levels screen. So Command L. And I generally would come in here, and you can kind of see this is kind of the data of the image, I guess. And to get rid of the white, I would pull up the white, and I would pull down the dark, and that would be a whole process, which annoyed me a lot. So at some point, I pivoted to this thing where with the text setting, you don't even need to do that, because the white's already, it's all in one thing. Oh, hello, Ashley, how you doing? So when the white is all in one kind of like it's a binary thing, and there's no kind of shades of gray in there, it's much easier to use the magic wand tool, which is maybe the handiest tool in this whole system, to just select, go right click and similar, and then layer by cut. And that pulls out all and you can just delete that layer, and then that's all your whole white gone. So you just have just the lines, which is much easier than this whole thing before that I used to do, where I used to have to mess around with the levels and try and get the gray and the black white right, and yeah. And then you can just add a new solid color underneath, like this, like that. Cool. So generally, at this stage, I'll have this as my designated line layer, which I'll title line. And then I've got my background layer, which is like, I guess, your paper. You can change you double click on it, you can change the color of the background paper, which you don't need to do really. So there are some considerations really early on about how you want to set up your file, and it really depends on where what you're gonna use it for. And so because we're using it online, generally I would use for this image, I would use RGB or Cmyk color, because they're just the kind of the two full color settings that are the most common, and Cmyk is good for print as well. Thanks, Kim Lamb. How you doing? So I'll change it here to Cmyk color. So, because at the moment when you scan it, it's set to gray, which you can see up here in the top of the tab. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but yeah. Oh, I'm also, I guess you can't see my, oh, you can see that now. Yeah, cool. So, hey. So yeah, so I'm going to change it to Cmyk because it's currently set to grayscale. So if I applied color to that, it would all just show up as like, you know, ranges of gray. Hello, hi. So it's asking me if I want to merge. Don't like to merge. It's very bad to merge. No merging. Cool. So it is currently Cmyk, which is cyan, magenta, yellow, and the K stands for black. Yeah, that's most things you see in print are prepared in Cmyk settings. And we can talk a little bit later about exporting it for the internet, despite using a print setting. But cool. At this stage, generally, I would go through and I would separate from my line layer any of the things that the lines that will not be black. So I'll separate all the lines that will be. Usually, this is very particular to my style, obviously, but I'll go through with the Lasso Tool, which is there are 3 types of Lasso Tool, and you can click down on that. And I would generally use that Lasso Tool, the kind of more freeform one. All this stuff I do on a trackpad, by the way, as well, which you're allowed to do it on whatever makes sense for your, the longevity of your wrists and your back and stuff. But this has worked for me. Basing on this this biscuit painting, there are a couple of lines that are going to be white, and I'm just selecting them out. If I go too quickly over anything, or if there's any questions, there are certain things I feel like that my brain does, everyone's brain does, where you just kind of like, there are just synapses that fire about certain things, and like I'll go to my Lasso Tool like straight away, and I won't explain that I'm going to my Lasso Tool. So if I miss anything, let me know, but I'll try and keep on top of it. But yeah, so just as I'm doing this, I'm holding down the Shift key as I select each element, so that it keeps the other elements that it's selected before. So it's still selecting all these ones and not losing any of them. So with that, I'll go right-click, layer via cut for those ones, and I'll call that line white. Now you can see we've got, if I turn that layer off, that's all of the white line content has been totally separated. And you can kind of move that around and mess around with it. So the next step on my list is, you should save the file at this stage, because what happens if there's like a power issue? So I would go, it's currently, we scanned it as a TIFF file. So TIFF files are, I'm pretty sure one of the kind of the high quality image files. And so generally I scan all my line drawings as 600 DPI TIFFs. And because I scan them text, there's not much data in there. Which is, because it's only black and white, there's no gray, or color. So this image file would probably be like under a megabyte, because it's a text file. So it's another reason I'm an advocate for these the text scanner settings. But yes, so what is next? So you should save your file. So you would save it as a PSD file, which is the Photoshop file kind of with the most malleability. So I'd save that in my document here. Yep, and also the largest image size, I guess, as well. But cool. So at this stage, I guess I should talk about a couple of the tools that we're using and a couple of tools that are really helpful. So I guess we'll just go through the interface because I've kind of jumped around a little bit here, but so I feel like a lot of them are kind of self-explanatory. You can kind of look at them and be like, okay, this is an eraser. I'm not going to explain the eraser. But the Magic Wand tool, there's something about the Magic Wand tool which is tolerance. So that's this little section up here where you can change the value. So, and we'll go into the grayscale image to show you this as an example. So if I'm using the Magic Wand tool and I have it on a tolerance of 1, when I select something with the Magic Wand tool, it will select just that color. So, and it's like so specific of what it's selecting because it has a very low tolerance. But if I was to up the tolerance to say 10, then it will increase what it considers to be part of that kind of field that it's selecting. So, and it'll only kind of select the things that it's touching in that area. So you can kind of see that it's kind of increased the amount there. So if I was starting from this point and I wanted to select all of this white and this kind of paper value, I would select, let's say 50, so up to 100. And you can see when you select 50, it kind of will go all the way to the edge of this kind of white section here, and from there you can use the classic right-click similar, and I will select all of the kind of off-white value that it deems similar to what it is selecting, and from there you can layer by cut, and you kind of separate them. So that's a cool thing about the wand tool that is fun to share. What else have I got here? So the history tool. The history tool, for everyone who doesn't know, is the kind of Command Z or Control Z undo tool, and you can kind of control. I think in the preferences you can control how many it will record. But usually I think it's set to like record about 30 steps. So as you can see, like with this, when we're doing all of our selecting, you can see all the things that we've done previously, and you can kind of undo back to opening. Oh, no worries, Seth, how you doing? Yeah, so that's a cool part about the history tool. It helps you not make as many mistakes. The Actions tab. So this is kind of a complicated one. It's one of my favorite ones. Seth does here. I gave you some advice about the Actions tab one time, and I feel like it led you down a path, and you accidentally something went wrong with some files. The image quality of some files. I think there's a difference between the Actions tab and the batch setting. Which kind of do similar things. So the actions section here will allow you to kind of automate a process. So you can set up a new action, and then you can see it's kind of recording and it's seeing what I'm doing. I press P here, which is my shortcut for my pencil. So it will record that I've selected pencil. And the same for like if you save, it'll include the saving as part of the action. And so if you're saving if you're doing like 10 documents, that's good. Yeah, if you're doing like 10 documents or something, and you have to do the same kind of like I use this in my work, the actions function, because I usually am taking an image like this, which is a line drawing, and it's usually it looks like history looks like that, right? Where it's a background layer, it's locked, it's gray. There are all these things that I've got to do where I've got to set it to Cmyk, I've got to unlock the background, I want to change the name background to line. There's a lot of things like that that are kind of just admin that I have to do to get the image, my line drawing, to the point where I can start coloring it. And that's what I use actions for, where I record, I'll start recording something, and I'll record, myself changing it from gray to Cmyk, changing it from background to say the word line, separating the white so you can see, you can set selection. So I'm magic wanding the white, similar layer by a cut, which didn't work because it was locked. But so there's an order to these things. But anyways, that's a tool. I may even have the thing here. Yeah, so it's called D-White. All these are called the wrong, just ridiculous names. But you can see this is a list of the functions where I've set a set background, set selection, which is choosing something with a magic wand, similar, which is choosing all of that similar color, layer via cut, which is getting rid of all the white layer on my lines. You can kind of see as it goes down. So, and a lot of these ones too, I have to change the canvas size. So I have to change the size of the document so that it's easier to manage and all that stuff. So someone's asking about other programs. I think that they're all probably equally. Like Procreate, I've heard is really great. I don't like Photoshop and Adobe, but it's kind of the program that I've trained my brain to use the most. And it would be a real process to undo that, I feel like, at this point. So I think Procreate is meant to be very good, and there's a bunch of other ones that are. If you Google alternatives to Photoshop, there's like all these different websites of people who are compiling resources. Yeah, it is very expensive. It's too expensive, I would say. Yes, I don't like it. There are ways for it to be cheaper, I would say, without implying it. Like I think you can get it through a university if you have a friend who goes to a university, I guess. I don't know, but there are other ways to get it cheaper, but yeah, it is a very expensive program. So it is also for the purposes that I've used it for, it's a very good program, despite their business practices, which are not so good. But it does a lot of different things. So yeah. So that's a drawing of Giorgio de Chirico, by the way, but ignore that for now. So what is next? Feel free to ask, if anyone has any questions about things so far. Kind of jumping around a little bit because I've got a thing, and I put on the tools talk at the bottom, but the tools, the things that, anyway. So the pencil tool. I'm a big advocate of the pencil tool. Okay, so if you look under your brush tool, if you hold down on the brush tool, there's a tool called the pencil tool, and let me go here. So I'm gonna just undo this. Okay. So the pencil tool and the brush tool, I've written pencil versus brush tool because I think they're kind of similar tools, but they have for the way I use it, they feel like very different functions. So if we zoom right in while we're using the pencil tool, you can see that if I click down, if I have a green color selected, then when I click on it, it'll give me this block of green that is 100% green, and there's no kind of kind of dithering on the edge of it at all. Whereas with the brush tool, if you're using the brush tool, which is and very big brush tool, but the wobbly camera, not the. Anyway. Okay. When you do a brush tool, generally, and even when the hardness is set to 100, so the hardness is kind of the setting that allows you to choose how complete this kind of how much it fills out the tool, I guess, when you're laying the digital ink on. Even when it's on 100%, you can see that there's still an edge to it that is kind of soft, which means that when you select it, when you select a pencil tool, it will select all the way to the edge of the green content. But when you select a brush tool content, depending on what your tolerance is, so it'll kind of pick it'll pick up most of it, it'll pick up most of it, but then there's kind of like little remnants. And so then when you move it around, you're kind of left sometimes with these little sections here, these little remnants, which I'm not a fan of this in my own process. So I don't know if that's helpful for you to hear, but yeah, that's why I'm advocate of the pencil tool, because you can really, if you're laying down a block of solid color, you can select, when you select it, you're kind of selecting the whole thing, and there's no remnants of any kind of artifacts that you're leaving around. But yeah, so next I guess I'll go into one of the things that really helped me kind of use Photoshop as kind of a tool that is kind of melded into my brain in a weird way, where you can customize the hotkeys. So got the thing here. Okay, so it's into edit keyboard shortcuts. So under edit, and then if you scroll all the way down, I don't know if this is the same on all versions, but keyboard shortcuts. Okay. So this tool, there are a lot of things where the pencil tool doesn't have a shortcut. I use the pencil tool a lot. The pencil tool automatically is set up to be B, so that when you use the hotkey B, that will just go to brush automatically, and pencil you can't get to quickly. So as a shorthand, because I use the pencil tool, I've set the pencil tool to P, which I think meant I had to move something off P. But if you're not using a tool, then you may as well kind of, and you are using a certain tool a lot, you may as well kind of put it to the hotkey that makes sense for your brain, and kind of mold the program to work better with what you're doing. Similarly, if you are finding that you're using the program to color something, or you're working on something, and you always find that you're pressing a button that accidentally changes there's so many things like that in Photoshop. There's a hotkey that will reset a whole this. I think the I used to be one where I would click I, and I would have two colors selected, and it would just go to white and black. And I was like, why is it's so annoying? I keep on losing my palettes. And the same with this. There was another one where it kept it would change if you accidentally clicked a certain button, it would change the workspace to look kind of different. There are things like this that if you find yourself getting caught in these traps of it doing it again and again and again, you should just turn them off, because it's not working for you the way that it kind of could if you just turn that thing off. So that's in edit. I think it's edit keyboard shortcuts. So and you can kind of go through the tools settings, and you can see here, and you can kind of change which letters the tools are assigned to. Yeah. So one shortcut that also really helped speed a lot of things up was the on the keyboard. I don't know how to show this to you, but it's like the buttons that are next to P on a QWERTY keyboard. So they're like the squiggly brackets, the two squiggly brackets. If you're in Photoshop, those two squiggly brackets will, and you're using a brush, they will adjust the size of the brush if you kind of click them up and down like that. I don't know, that's a super helpful shortcut that I found. What else? Cool. So maybe we'll just start. Maybe I'll just start coloring this thing, and we'll talk about it as we go. It's 6:30. We'll start talking about it as we go, and yeah, feel free to ask questions in the chat, and I'll go through some more stuff. So broadly, like when I'm doing something, when I make Photoshop documents, I just like hundreds of layers. Like I have layers for everything, and I have those layers usually in folders. So like, you know, if I was looking at this, before I set up a document, I'll say, you know, usually it would be less hectically kind of the surrealist piece where you can't really tell what everything is, but I guess this can be called structures. And I guess we could have a folder called biscuits. You know, obviously there's only 2 biscuits, but it's fun to have a folder called biscuits. But yeah, so I would generally have folders for everything, for something like this, the kind of, can you exploit the drawing in Photoshop as vector like Illustrator? I don't know. I feel like, I think that you can. I don't. Yeah, I don't have a good answer for that. I feel like vector stuff is kind of, it feels like a whole other world where it's like, for people who don't know the difference between vector illustrations and kind of a lot of other illustrations, vector are kind of path-based, and it's kind of more like code. Like you can see a drawing as code in vector, but so, but in photo, I don't know how to describe this well, but I will continue to try. But in you know, other image making things, everything is done in pixels. So you kind of will have a certain amount of pixels, and each of those pixels will have a color or, you know, whatever. But when you're looking at a vector illustration, there is no kind of size necessarily, from what I understand. It's a pathway, and it could be, for that reason, like emoji. A lot of emojis are vectors, and the reason they're vectors is because they can scale infinitely, because it's not pixel based. It's pathway based, from what I understand. But I don't, so that's why I guess you couldn't export as a vector from Photoshop, because Photoshop is fundamentally like pixels, you know. I think that's what the pen tool is on Photoshop. I don't know where I've like hidden the pen tool, because it scares me. The pen tool. Oh, here it is. Yeah, I don't. It's kind of, the pen tool is an example of something where it's like you're drawing in pathways. Oh, terrifying. So I don't think I have a good answer for that, Ari. I'm so sorry. But cool. Okay, so I'm going to pull this Jchirka. This Jchirka. He was meant to be in this. So he has this painting, and I wanted to do that thing like the Onion in the Onion cartoons, where they he's sitting in the bottom corner, kind of looking at his own painting. So, looking smug. Look at him there with his biscuits. Okay, so so let's put him over here and George here. Yes, raster files. That's the yes. With embedded vector data. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Thank you so much, Jesse, for finding that. There's a much more succinct answer than my rambling. Okay, So to start on this, yeah, I guess for this, I'll biscuit 1. I'll start coloring them in. So generally I usually do this, it doesn't really matter what color I'm coloring with. I'll go in and I'll plug all the holes in this drawing, as you can see, so that it's a kind of solid, it's a solid shape. So I can then use the fill tool, which I think is automatically hotkeyed to F. I can use the fill tool and I can just fill it in, and hopefully there's no holes in my biscuit. This biscuit here, the second biscuit, is an example of a biscuit with holes. As you can see, there's a hole there. So when I try and fill this biscuit, it fills the whole area. Very stressful. So we don't want that. We want to fill the edges on these things, kind of like plug in holes here. So a green biscuit, that's okay for this particular biscuit. Okay, so this is another thing that is extremely helpful. So I will commonly use like Command L and Command U. So Command L, we talked about it a little bit before, which is the automatically the way to get to edit, what is it? Image adjustments levels. So Command L. So Command L will help you play around with kind of the intensity of an image. It won't change the hue of the image, but it'll change the intensity of the tone of the image. So there's a lot of ways there you can kind of play around that with Command L for the levels function. Command U is kind of one of my favorite features of this thing, which is so it's the Hue Saturation adjustment section. So you can see it here in image adjustment hue. Where is it? Command U. Hue Saturation. So if I'll be looking at these biscuits and I've colored these biscuits green, the wrong color for biscuits. Some matcha biscuits. Anyway, a detour. So I want to colorize. And then when you colorize, you can kind of use this hue slider to experiment and see what color the biscuits need to be. So generally, I think the Jericho biscuits are kind of a golden brown biscuit. So there's that. So I guess it's around that. So you kind of toggle with these 3 sliders here, and you can kind of find your the right color usually. This is great as well for like if you have a whole image sometimes and something feels off about the image. Like I'll go into I have there's another image on there. I've opened a very big image. One of those fun moments. It's good to have a little bit. Does anyone have any questions so far about tools? There's still more tools to talk about as well. There's so many tools. Okay, one day. Disappointing. Okay, so this one. So talking about Command U and Hue, right? If you have a whole image and you kind of finished your whole image and something's feeling weird about the whole image, like you're like, this like the colors are kind of off. Something I like to do is I'll take the whole, so this is the front cover in a folder, and I'll right click, I'll duplicate the whole thing, and I'll So there's a backup, and then I'll go right click, and I'll go merge group, which is Command E. It's the shortcut for that, which is really handy. So Command E to merge the whole thing. So once that's all on one layer, you can kind of apply an adjustment filter to it. So generally I'd duplicate it, I'd merge them, and I go Command U, and then I would use my colorize, the colorize thing. Oh no, colorize puts it in the horizontal, puts it all into one hue. So you don't want that. With something like this where it's all different hues, you can kind of play around and see what's going on here. Like, you know, is a blue text good? No, generally, well, this cover, no, is the answer. Yeah, it's very rewarding to kind of, it's interesting to look at, I think, with this stuff with growing up, to kind of see what it looks like in a different, different color. And obviously the saturation, the more you up the saturation, the more it looks like there's a graph print. Cool. So where are we at? There. I'll go through a few more tools that are great, and then I guess we'll keep on coloring, unless anyone has any questions as we go. The next one is the gradient tool. The gradient tool is good for a bunch of reasons, but I guess like the most basic use of the gradient tool would be a two-tone gradient. So that is a kind of an A to B gradient. Yes, so T-Dog Extreme. That's such a good question, and that's the way that's why I would use a pencil instead of using the brush. Because as we talked about before, there is no dithering on a pencil tool. When you do a fill with a pencil tool, which is under your brush, under the brush here, when you do a fill, it is 100%. So that's something that, I don't know, that's the way I get around that. Obviously, everyone's art style is totally different, and you'll find a way that it works with your art, I guess. And but yeah, that is the best way. And then I guess like definitely if I'm filling next to a pencil tool, sometimes there will be a little, there isn't in that instance. I feel like sometimes there is a little white line and you just need to press it again and it'll just fill that section. But one of the things about the brush is, sorry, the paint bucket tool is that it also has a tolerance feature. So, which is the same as we talked about the wand before, the wand having this kind of tolerance thing up here that allows you to choose a certain amount of a tone. And so the brush, like if I've got obviously some of the colors here we've got, I should go back to this guy. So where it's kind of a more complicated image. I guess this is annoying because it's a strange image. So this is kind of this whole other thing. But is there no, this is all screen turned officially. But so with the, oh yeah, I can't do it in that setting. But yeah, I guess so with the bucket, if you have a set to a tolerance of 1, it'll really only fill on the area that is that, like 100% that tone that you're clicking on that is connected to that. So this is obviously a block of orange. And when I click on this paint bucket tool with a tolerance of 1, it will only paint bucket on the orange bits that are 100% that orange. But if it was like, if I had like an area that was, yeah, an area that was like slightly different, I guess. Or I guess a gradient would be a good way to show this off. The cool thing about the gradient is you can have a gradient with 2 tones, or you can have it with nothing in the background. So it's just kind of, I use this a lot for kind of light. So I'll kind of go, I'll usually go in at the end of some of the work drawings I've been doing, which look, I don't know if I have any of them. Yeah. But yeah, this is an example. So this one, I would go in at the end of this drawing with a gradient tool. And so this mobile phone light stuff, that's all kind of gradient tool based. So I can show you here. So also I think the shadow is not, but yeah, so that's the light, which is just 100% white gradient tool. And I'll do one of these where I kind of I'll make a small gradient with a white to nothing, or I'll select kind of the phone window kind of thing, and then add a gradient like that, and it'll kind of give me kind of an A to B of like, I see my finger pointing, but yeah, like an A to B from kind of more intense on the right hand side, obviously, to less intense. With gradients and light sources and stuff like that, I also toggle with this opacity, which is kind of filter over here or toggle over here, which is, so each of your layers over here has a different opacity setting. And yeah, I find that's really good for playing around with light layers, I guess. So if I have a phone light, obviously it's not like 10,000 lumens. It's obviously like a just a phone. So yeah, that is that. Did that answer your question, T-Dog Extreme, or did I kind of tangent a little bit there? I don't know if that's exactly what. Okay. There's probably only like 5-10 minutes left of this public one, and I have a couple other things I could go on about. But is there anything anyone else wants to hear about? I guess you could also message me if anyone has any. Not that I know everything. I just know a couple of the things that help make this work for me. But we could talk about them, I guess. Yeah, I guess the other thing is I was going to talk about was saving for web, which is something that maybe not a lot of people, or maybe a lot of people know about. But if you have like an image like this, so we colored this. What a beautiful Giorgio de Chirico painting that we've colored, and we want to export it for the web, and we want to make sure that the browser can see all the colors. There's a save for web function, which kind of ensures that it's matching the colors that you've chosen in Cmyk, which aren't necessarily exactly the same as web browser colors. So the save for web function is cool. That's good. That's good to hear. Yeah. Yeah, I think also, like, not to sound like I'm anti kind of dithering or whatever. Just I feel like it helps to just have this. The other thing I should talk about before we kind of cut out is I finished with the save for web. So this save function, instead of just going save as JPEG, you want to go save for web, which is loading. I have a computer that I bought in Gumtree from a man at a bar. It doesn't work. It works great for what it does. It's very light. Yeah, generally, if you're saving most things for web, you want to save it as a JPEG. You can kind of mess around with the quality here that kind of will affect the file size, which is kind of listed here. And yeah, it's a much it'll get you more accurate colors from what's in your Photoshop document to what you are sharing online. Whereas sometimes I feel like you might notice if you're just going save JPEG from what you've been working on in a Photoshop document, you'll upload it online, and then some browsers can't see those colors. Like they'll show them as different colors, and that's not the color that I chose. Anyway, so the other advantage of working in pixels is that when you a cool thing you can do is, so if I just want to select the biscuits, which is something that is common in my practice. So if I select biscuits, you can go Command, and then you can click on this little icon here, and it will select everything in that layer. So I generally, that's kind of why I keep everything in separate layers, and I'm very kind of, you know, my Photoshop documents generally, like for this one, I can show you, for this one, it's like, you know, there's folders for everything. So there's folders for backyard, backyard fences, grass, couch. And it's like, I think when you get to the end of a paint, like a picture like this, you have this couch and it's blue, or you have it and it's, you know, you know, you started and it was like, it looked good at the start when it was like red or something like that. And then you get to the end and everything needs to be different for some reason. When you have everything on a different layer, you can just go in, Command, and then click on the icon, and it will just select that content on that layer. And then generally I'm going through and going Command U, which is the image adjustments, hue, saturation, and then I'm kind of toggling around and seeing what looks right, I guess, for whatever element it is I'm trying to recolor. Yeah. I think that's kind of everything, maybe, that I had written down. I didn't talk about the clone stamp tool, which I use sometimes. We'll talk about that in a minute, which I think is probably all we have. I'm not sure. I don't know if it's good to open the private chat on this. And I have my whole screen shared. I feel like that would be not very private, because it's explicitly called private. On my wrong. So I'm zooming here with Command plus and minus as well. That's kind of another shortcut that is very helpful. But coin stamp is great for, so this is the coin stamp tool. Here, it's under S. I think I set it under S. It might have been under something else originally. But coin stamp tool is, you hold down the, this is on a Mac. I don't know what it is on the PC, but you can look it up, I guess. Alt or Option key, and it will clone whatever you're selecting within this thing. So if I hold it down and click, it clones it, right? And then that tool has cloned this section, so I can make a double nose if I wish. This is a very exciting type of nose that we've made here. So I guess like I would use that generally if I'm like, you know, this is my practice. I would like use it to extend lines or whatever. A shortcut for that. Yeah, that's probably everything. And within the time, I guess. Mira, is that a good? Maybe I'll stop sharing.
Yes, I think that's great. That was really useful. Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to go through all that. And thanks everybody who asked such good questions. Oh, maybe we have one more question. How long did it take to grow your mustache?
So yeah, it was you know, just some time. It's been a lifelong aspiration that, you know, it's weird to get to a point.
All right. Well, on that note, I think we are going to finish out the live broadcast now. Thanks everybody for watching, and thank you, Marc Pearson.
Thanks everyone.
Do you want to plug a website or something? Do you have your own
Probably
website?
a new glompress.com, which is the
glompress.com.
Mira's got a book that is on there, and will be more. And yeah, Glompress. We just got a new website.
Yes, everyone check out Glompress.
My plug.
All right. Yeah, I think that's it. Thanks, everybody.